How are you guys doing? Today is Monday, November 8th, 2021. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, I'm going to review the Elite matchups and performances from yesterday, Sunday, November 7th, and just to take a quick snapshot of where we are at this point in the calendar year. The college football season is just coming off of its 10th week, as the NFL is just coming off of its 9th Sunday. So, of course, we're in the height of the football seasons. NBA basketball just picked up at the same time as the NHL. Not to mention that college basketball starts tomorrow. And of course, never forget that there's always soccer going on overseas at all times all year round. So taking a quick look at what's going on first in the NFL, as there's no college sports to get into. Starting off in Cincinnati, the Cincinnati Bengals hosted the Cleveland Browns, and in this intrastate matchup, the Cleveland Browns would beat the Bengals 41-16. The Bengals were outscored 24-10 in the first half, and then the Browns outscored the Bengals 17-6 in the second. Bengals were led by their starting quarterback, Joe Burrow, the former number 1 overall pick. He threw for 282 yards and 2 interceptions. He also ran for a yard. That's 283 total yards. Cincinnati's leading rusher was Joe Mixon. He had 13 carries for 64 yards, and he had both of the Bengals rushing touchdowns on the ground. He would also finish with 46 yards through the air, so that's 110 total yards of offense for him. Cincinnati's leading receiver was T. Higgins. He had 6 receptions for 78 yards. On the defensive side of the ball for Cincinnati, Jermaine Pratt and Logan Wilson led the team in tackles, as they both had 6 of them. The team would combine for 2 sacks. And then looking at how the Cleveland Browns fared, they were led by their starting quarterback, Baker Mayfield, out of Oklahoma. Mayfield he also a former number 1 overall pick. Mayfield threw for 218 yards and 2 touchdowns. The Cleveland Browns' leading rusher was their elite running back, Nick Chubb. He had 14 carries for 137 yards and 2 touchdowns. He had 2 receptions through the air for 26 yards. That would be 163 total yards of offense. Cleveland's leading receiver was Donovan Mitchell. He had 2 receptions for 86 yards, as he had a touchdown. On the defensive side of the ball, Anthony Walker led the team in tackles, as he had 14 of them, and he had a sack. Cleveland's second leading tackler, Troy Hill, had 2 sacks on the day. Their elite defensive end, Myles Garrett, had 2 tackles, as he had a sack and a half. John Johnson III would get an interception that wouldn't go for a touchdown, and then Denzel Ward, in addition to his 2 tackles, would have an interception that would go 99 yards for an interception for a touchdown of his own. With this win, the Cleveland Browns and the Cincinnati Bengals are 5-4 as a result of this matchup. Taking a look at what's going on in New Orleans, the New Orleans Saints took on their division rival, the Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons would end up beating the Saints 27-25. The Falcons outscored New Orleans 10-0 in the first half. The Saints outscored Atlanta 25-17 in the second half, 22-10 in the fourth quarter, but it just wouldn't be enough. The Saints were led by their starting quarterback, Trevor Siemian. He threw for 249 yards and 2 touchdowns. Their leading carrier was their elite running back, Alvin Kamara. He had 13 carries for 50 yards and a touchdown on the ground. He had 4 receptions for 54 yards through the air. That's 104 total yards of offense. On the defensive side of the ball, their leading tacklers were Marcus Williams and David Onyemata. They both had 7 on the day. And then on the Atlanta Falcons side of affairs, they were led by their elite starting quarterback, Matt Ryan. He completed 23 of his 30 passes, as he threw for 343 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also ran for 8 yards and an additional touchdown. That's 351 total yards of offense and 3 touchdowns for Matt Ryan. The Falcons' leading receiver was Cordero Patterson. He had 6 receptions for 126 yards. He also had 10 rushing yards on 9 carries, so that's 136 total yards of offense. The Falcons' third leading receiver, Olamide Zaccheaus, finished with 3 receptions for 58 yards, as he had both of the Falcons' receiving touchdowns. On the defensive side of the ball, Deion Jones led the team in tackles, as he had 10 of them. With this win, the Atlanta Falcons are 4-4, and with this loss, the New Orleans Saints are 5-3 at this point of the season. Taking a look at what's going on in Dallas, the Dallas Cowboys hosted the Denver Broncos. The Broncos would end up beating the Cowboys 30-16. The Broncos outscored the Cowboys, shut them out 19-0 through the first 3 quarters of the game, as the Cowboys outscored the Broncos 16-11 in the fourth quarter. It wouldn't be enough. The Cowboys were led by their starting quarterback, Dak Prescott. Prescott threw for 232 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. He also ran for 16 yards. That's 248 total yards of offense for him. Their elite running back, Ezekiel Elliott, had 10 carries for 51 yards. He also had 25 yards through the air. That's 76 total yards of offense. The Cowboys' third leading receiver, Malik Turner, had 5 receptions for 33 yards, as he had both of Dak Prescott's receiving touchdowns. On the defensive side of the ball, Leighton Vander Esch would lead the team in tackles, as he had 12 of them. Their second leading tackler, Micah Parsons, had 10 tackles, as he had 2.5 sacks on the day. Looking at how the Denver Broncos fared, their starting quarterback, Teddy Bridgewater, threw for 249 yards and a touchdown. Their leading rusher, Javonte Williams, had 17 carries for 111 yards. Their second leading carrier, Melvin Gordon, had 21 carries for 80 yards, as he had a rushing touchdown. He also had 15 yards through the air, so that's 95 total yards of offense. The Broncos' leading receiver was Tim Patrick. He had 4 receptions for 85 yards, as he had the Broncos' lone receiving touchdown. On the defensive side of the ball, Kareem Jackson had 9 tackles, and their third leading tackler, Jonathan Cooper, had 4 tackles for 2 sacks, or 4 tackles, and he had both of the Broncos' sacks on the day. Caden Stearns, along with his 3 tackles, would have the team's only interception. With this win, the Denver Broncos are 5-4. With this loss, the Dallas Cowboys are 6-2. Taking a look at what's going on in Miami, the Miami Dolphins hosted the Houston Texans, and in this matchup, the Dolphins would beat the Texans. Both teams came into this matchup with a 1-7 record. The Dolphins outscored the Texans, scored all 17 of their points in the first half, outscored them 17-6, and the Texans only scored a field goal in the second half. It wouldn't be enough. The Texans were led by their starting quarterback, Tyrod Taylor. Taylor threw for 240 yards and 3 interceptions. Through the air, their leading receiver was Brandon Cooks, as he had 6 receptions for 56 yards. On the defensive side of the ball, Neville Hewitt finished with 10 tackles on the day. Jordan Jenkins finished with 4 tackles, as he had a sack and a half. And then through the air, Eric Murray would finish with an interception, as he had 8 tackles on the day. And then Malik Collins would have the team's other interception, as Malik Collins finished with 2 tackles on the day for himself. On the Miami Dolphins side of things, their starting quarterback, Jacoby Brissett, threw for 244 yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions. He also ran for 7 yards. That's 251 total yards of offense for Brissett. The Dolphins' leading receiver, Jalen Waddle, finished with 8 receptions for 83 yards. On the defensive side of the ball for the Dolphins, Jerome Baker, Brandon Jones, and Landon Roberts would each finish with 7 tackles, the team high. Emmanuel Ogbah finished with 4 tackles, as he had 2.5 sacks on the day. The team would combine for 5. Justin Coleman, Jerome Baker, and Javon Holland would all have interceptions as well. Holland would, or I guess he would fumble. But regardless, with this win, the Miami Dolphins are now 2-7. With this loss, the Houston Texans are now 1-8 at this point in the season. Taking a look at what's going on in New York, the New York Giants hosted the Las Vegas Raiders. The Giants would end up beating the Raiders 23-16. The Giants would get outscored 13-10 in the first half, but then they would come back and outscore the Raiders 13-3 in the second half. The Las Vegas Raiders were led by their starting quarterback, Derek Carr. Carr threw for 296 yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions. He also ran for 5, so that's 301 total yards of offense for Derek Carr. The Raiders' leading rusher was their elite running back, Josh Jacobs. He had 13 carries for 76 yards. He also had 4 receptions for 19 yards through the air. That's 95 total yards of offense. The Raiders' leading receiver was Darren Waller. He had 7 receptions for 92 yards. And then their second leading carrier, Kenyon Drake, was also their second leading receiver. He had 30 yards on the ground and 70 yards on the air to give him 100 total yards of offense. On the defensive side of the ball, Denzel Perryman led the team in tackles as he had 10 of them for the day. And Yannick Ngakoue, his 2 tackles would end up being sacks, so that would be very important. On the New York Giants side of the ball, they were led by their starting quarterback, Daniel Jones, out of Duke. He finished throwing for 110 yards and a touchdown. He also ran for 17. That's 127 total yards of offense. The New York Giants' leading rusher was Devontae Booker. He had 21 carries for 99 yards. He also had 23 yards through the air. That's 122 total yards of offense. The Giants' leading tackler was Logan Ryan and Tay Crowder. They both finished with 9 tackles on the day. Xavier McKinney would finish with 2 interceptions along with his 7 tackles, as one of his interceptions was returned all the way for a touchdown. As looking at this game, the Giants were up by 1 at one point, and they needed the 2 field goals from Graham Gano to give them the win. With this win, the New York Giants are 3-6. With this loss, the Las Vegas Raiders are now 5-3 at this point in the season. Taking a look at what is going on in Charlotte, the Carolina Panthers hosted the New England Patriots. The Patriots ended up beating the Panthers 24-6, outscoring Carolina 14-6 in the first half and shutting them out 10-0 in the second half. The Carolina Panthers were led by their starting quarterback, Sam Darnold, out of USC. He threw for 172 yards and 3 interceptions. He also ran for 9 yards. That's 181 total yards of offense. Their leading rusher and receiver was their elite running back, Christian McCaffrey. He finished with 14 carries for 52 yards. He had 4 receptions for 54 yards. That's 106 total yards of offense for him. On the defensive side of the ball, Jeremy Chin would lead the team in tackles as he had 11 of them. Shaq Thompson had 10 tackles. Brian Burns, the third leading tackler, had 6 tackles as he had a sack and a half. Stephon Gilmore would have Carolina's only interception for the day. And for the New England Patriots, their starting quarterback, Mac Jones, first-round pick from this most recent draft, threw for 139 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. The Patriots' leading rusher, Ramondre Stevenson, had 10 carries for 62 yards on the ground. He was also the Patriots' leading receiver as he had 2 receptions for 44 yards. He finished with 106 total yards of offense for New England. On the defensive side of the ball, Adrian Phillips led the team in tackles as he had 6 of them. Jamie Collins Sr. would finish with an interception for himself along with his 2 tackles. J.C. Jackson, along with his 2 tackles, he would have 2 interceptions as one of them would end up being an interception. It ended up being an 88-yard pick six to the house to keep the Patriots undefeated on the road. With this win, the New England Patriots are now 5-4 at this point in the season. With this loss, the Carolina Panthers are now 4-5. Taking a look at what's going on in Jacksonville, the Jaguars hosted the Buffalo Bills, and the Jacksonville Jaguars would beat the Bills 9-6. The game was even at halftime as the score was tied at 6. The Jaguars would win the game off of a field goal with 12 minutes left in the fourth quarter from Matthew Wright to give them their second win of the season. The Buffalo Bills were led by their elite starting quarterback, Josh Allen. He completed 31 of his 47 passes as he threw for 264 yards and 2 interceptions. He ran for 50 yards as well, so that would be 314 total yards of offense. Their leading receiver was their elite wide receiver, Stephon Diggs. He had 6 receptions for 85 yards. The Bills' leading tackler was Tremaine Edmonds, their elite linebacker. He finished with 8 tackles on the day. And for the Jacksonville Jaguars, their elite starting quarterback, the number 1 overall pick from the 2021 NFL Draft, Trevor Lawrence, would complete 15 of his 26 passes as he threw for 118 yards. He also ran for 4 yards, has 122 total yards of offense. The Jacksonville Jaguars' leading rusher was Carlos Hyde as he had 67 on the ground, and with an additional 6 through the air, that's 73 total yards of offense. The Jaguars' leading tackler was their defensive end out of Kentucky, Josh Allen. He and Rudy Ford both had 8 tackles. Josh Allen would finish with a sack as he was the first player in NFL history to get a sack against a quarterback who had his same name, for same first and last name. He also recovered a fumble as well. The Jaguars would combine for 4 sacks, as 2 of them came from Taven Bryan. Josh Allen would also record an interception on the game, as well as Rudy Ford would record the other. With this win, the Jacksonville Jaguars are 2-6. With this loss, the Buffalo Bills at this point are 5-3. Taking a look at what's going on in Baltimore, the Baltimore Ravens hosted the Minnesota Vikings, and in this battle of purple, the Ravens would beat the Vikings in overtime thanks to a field goal from Justin Tucker. After the Ravens would, going into the fourth quarter, the Ravens would tie it up off of a Devin Duvernay 5-yard pass from Lamar Jackson. The Ravens took the lead with 3 minutes left off of a 1-yard touchdown from Le'Veon Bell, and Adam Thielen's 1-yard touchdown pass from Kirk Cousins would tie the game. And then Justin Tucker would end up having to make the field goal with 16 seconds left in overtime regardless. So had he not made it, it would have been a tie. The Vikings were led by their starting quarterback, Kirk Cousins, out of Michigan State. Cousins threw for 187 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also ran for a yard and an additional touchdown. That's 188 total yards of offense and 3 touchdowns for Kirk Cousins. Their elite running back, Dalvin Cook, led their team in rushing, as he had 17 carries for 110 yards. He would also go on to finish with 12 yards through the air. That's 122 total yards of offense. The Minnesota Vikings elite wide receiver Justin Jefferson would lead the team in yards, as he had 3 receptions for 69 yards and a receiving touchdown. On the defensive side of the ball, Eric Kendricks would finish with 18 tackles, finishing with the most tackles in the game. Cameron Bynum had 12, and Cameron Dantzler had 10 tackles. Sheldon Richardson had 4 tackles for Minnesota, as he had a sack and a half. And then Cameron Bynum, in addition to finishing with his 12 tackles, he would finish with an interception. And Anthony Barr out of UCLA and Loyola High School would finish with an interception despite not logging a tackle. The Baltimore Ravens were led by their elite starting quarterback, Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson completed 27 of his 41 passes, as he threw for 266 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. He also ran for 120 additional yards. That's 386 total yards of offense. Their second leading carrier, Devontae Freeman, had 13 carries for 79 yards, as he also had 4 yards and a touchdown through the air. That is 83 total yards of offense for him. The Ravens' leading receiver, Marquise Hollywood Brown, had 9 receptions for 116 yards on the day. And then on the defensive side of the ball, Josh Bynes had 11 tackles, leading the team, as the Ravens were unable to record a sack or an interception. With this win, the Baltimore Ravens are 6-2. With this loss, the Minnesota Vikings are 3-5 on the season. Ugly win or not, a win is a win. Taking a look at what went down in Philadelphia, the Philadelphia Eagles hosted the Los Angeles Chargers, and the Chargers beat the Eagles 27-24. The Eagles outscored the Chargers 10-7 in the first half, and the Chargers outscored the Eagles 20-14 in the second. The Eagles were led by their starting quarterback, the former Heisman winner out of Oklahoma, Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts would throw for 162 yards and a touchdown, as he also ran for 62 yards. That would be 224 total yards of offense for him. The Eagles' leading rusher was Jordan Howard. He had 17 carries for 71 yards, as he had a touchdown. The Eagles' leading receiver was their elite rookie wide receiver out of Alabama, Devontae Smith. He had 5 receptions for 116 yards and a receiving touchdown. On the defensive side of the ball, TJ Edwards was the Eagles' leading tackler, as he had 14 on the day. And then for the Los Angeles Chargers, their elite starting quarterback out of Oregon, Justin Herbert, completed 32 of his 38 passes, as he threw for 356 yards and 2 touchdowns. He would also run for 14 yards and an additional touchdown. That would be 370 total yards and 3 total touchdowns of offense for Justin Herbert. The Chargers' leading rusher was Austin Eckler. He had 17 carries for 59 yards. He also had 23 yards through the air. That would be 82 total yards of offense for him. The Chargers' leading receiver was Keenan Allen. He had 12 receptions for 104 yards. On the defensive side of the ball, Linval Joseph and Drew Tranquill both finished with 9 tackles on the day. With this win, the Los Angeles Chargers are 5-3. With this loss, the Philadelphia Eagles are now 3-6 at this point in the season. Taking a look at what's going on in Kansas City, the Kansas City Chiefs hosted the Green Bay Packers, and in this quarterback duel, the Chiefs would end up beating the Packers as Aaron Rodgers was expected, but of course he missed due to his coronavirus situation. The Chiefs shut the Packers out 13-0 in the first half, and the Packers scored their lone touchdown in the fourth quarter. The Packers were led by their starting quarterback, Jordan Love, out of UCLA. Love threw for 190 yards, a touchdown, and an interception, as he also ran for 23 yards. He finished with 213 total yards of offense. Their elite running back, Aaron Jones, would finish with the team high in rushing yards as he had 12 carries for 53 yards. And on the defensive side of the ball, Chris Barnes would be the Packers' leading tackler as he had 9 tackles on the day. Looking at the Kansas City Chiefs, they were led by their elite starting quarterback, Patrick Mahomes. Mahomes completed 20 of his 37 passes as he threw for 166 yards and a touchdown. Their leading receiver was their elite tight end, Travis Kelce, as he had 5 receptions for 68 yards and a receiving touchdown. On the defensive side of the ball, Charvarius Ward and Anthony Hitchens would lead the team in tackles as they both had 7 of them for the day. Their second leading tackler, Tyrann Mathieu, had 6 of them as he had a sack for himself. L'Jarius Sneed would finish with the game's only interception as he had 6 tackles for the Chiefs. With this win, the Kansas City Chiefs are now 5-4. With this loss, the Green Bay Packers are now 7-2 at this point in the season. Taking a look at what's going on in San Francisco, the San Francisco 49ers hosted the Arizona Cardinals, and the Cardinals were able to pick up a 31-17 win as they have won 8 of their first 9 games of the season. The Cardinals ended up outscoring the 49ers 17-7 in the first half, and they outscored the Niners 14-10 in the second half. The 49ers were led by their starting quarterback, Jimmy Garoppolo. He threw for 326 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. Their leading receiver was their elite tight end, George Kittle. He finished with 6 receptions for 101 yards and a touchdown. Their second leading receiver, Brandon Ayuk, had 6 receptions for 89 yards as he had a touchdown as well. On the defensive side of the ball, Fred Warner finished with 13 tackles as Eric Armstead had 10 tackles and a sack for himself. Looking at the Arizona Cardinals, they were led by their starting quarterback, Colt McCoy, out of Texas. He threw for 249 yards and a touchdown. He also ran for 23 yards. That would end up being 272 total yards of offense for him. The Cardinals' leading rusher, James Conner, finished with 21 carries for 96 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also had 5 receptions for 77 yards through the air and an additional touchdown. That would be 173 total yards of offense for him. The Cardinals' leading receiver was Christian Kirk out of Texas A&M. He had 6 receptions for 91 yards. On the defensive side of the ball, Jordan Hicks would finish with the team high in tackles as he had 8 tackles. He even recovered 2 fumbles himself. Marcus Golden finished with 5 tackles as he had 3 of the team's 5 sacks. Chandler Jones, their elite defensive end, had 3 tackles as he had a sack for himself. And then their elite safety, Budda Baker, would finish with an interception as he returned at 7 yards. With this win, the Arizona Cardinals are 8-1 on the season. And with this loss, the San Francisco 49ers are now 3-5. Last but not least, taking a look at what's going on in Los Angeles, the Los Angeles Rams hosted the Tennessee Titans. The Titans would end up beating the Rams 78-16. They ended up beating the Rams 28-16, as both of their records would be even at 7-2 following this matchup. The Titans outscored the Rams 21-3 in the first half, all 21 of those points coming in the second half. The Rams outscored the Titans 13-7 in the second half, but it wouldn't be enough for them to come back from that 18-point deficit. The Rams were led by their starting quarterback, Matt Stafford, out of Georgia. He threw for 294 yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions. He also ran for 13 yards. That would end up being 307 total yards of offense for him. The Rams' leading rusher, Darrell Henderson Jr., finished with 55 yards on the ground and 3 yards through the air, so that's 58 total yards of offense. Their leading receiver, Robert Woods out of USC, had 7 receptions for 98 yards. Their second leading receiver, Cooper Kupp, finished with 11 receptions for 95 yards. And then on the defensive side of the ball, Jordan Fuller led the team in tackles as he had 7 of them. And then Jalen Ramsey, the Rams' elite cornerback, would finish with 3 tackles as he had an interception for himself. The Tennessee Titans were led by their starting quarterback out of Texas A&M, Ryan Tannehill. Tannehill threw for 143 yards, a touchdown, and an interception as he also ran for 3 yards and an additional touchdown. Tannehill finished with 146 total yards of offense along with his 2 touchdowns. The Titans' leading receiver was A.J. Brown as he had 5 receptions for 42 yards. On the defensive side of the ball, Amani Hooker finished with 12 tackles for himself. Jeffrey Simmons out of Mississippi State finished with 6 tackles as he had 3 sacks for himself. Danico Autry had 3 tackles as he had a sack and a half as well. The Titans would combine for 5 sacks as a team. David Long Jr. would finish with an interception, and Kevin Byard would have a 24-yard pick six to go along with his 3 tackles for the day. With this win, the Tennessee Titans are now 7-2. With this loss, the Los Angeles Rams are now 7-2 as well, as of course the last game to look forward to for Week 9, the Monday night matchup between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Chicago Bears takes place tonight. Taking a look at what's going on in the NBA following yesterday's matchup, starting off north of the border in Toronto, the Raptors hosted the Brooklyn Nets. The Nets would end up beating the Raptors 116-103. The Nets outscored the Raptors by 18 points in the third quarter and by 20 in the fourth quarter. That would be a big difference for them considering they were trailing by 7 at the half. Taking a look at how the Raptors fared on the losing end, their leading scorer was their starting shooting guard, Fred VanVleet. He finished with 21 points and 8 assists in 41 minutes as he would go on to shoot 6 for 14 from the field, 3 for 8 from 3, and a perfect 6 for 6 from the foul line. Their elite starting power forward, Pascal Siakam, finished with 15 points, 4 rebounds, and a couple of blocks in 25 minutes. He shot 5 for 12 from the field, 1 for 3 from 3, and 4 for 5 from the foul line. The Brooklyn Nets were led in scoring by their goated starting power forward, Kevin Durant. He finished with 31 points, 7 rebounds, 7 assists, and 6 turnovers in 37 minutes. He shot 11 for 19 from the field, 3 for 6 from 3, and a perfect 6 for 6 from the foul line. Their elite starting shooting guard, James Harden, finished with 28 points, 10 rebounds, and 8 assists in 39 minutes. He shot 10 for 20 from the field, 3 for 10 from 3, and 5 for 6 from the foul line. Their elite starting power forward, Blake Griffin out of Oklahoma, finished with 14 points and 11 rebounds in 28 minutes. He shot 5 for 9 from the field, 4 for 6 from 3 as well. With this win, the Brooklyn Nets are 7-3. With this loss, the Toronto Raptors are 6-5. Taking a look at what's going on in New York, the New York Knicks hosted the Cleveland Cavaliers. The Cavaliers would end up beating the Knicks 126-109. The Cavaliers outscored the Knicks by 18 points in the second half in this matchup in order to get the difference, in order to win this game. The Knicks were led in scoring by their starting power forward out of Kentucky, Julius Randle. He finished with 19 points, 7 rebounds, and 7 assists as he would go on to play 37 minutes. He shot 7 for 17 from the field, and he shot 4 for 5 from the foul line as well. The Cleveland Cavaliers were led in scoring by their point guard off the bench from Spain, Ricky Rubio. Rubio finished with 37 points and 10 assists in 31 minutes. He shot 13 for 19 from the field, 8 for 9 from 3, and a perfect 3 for 3 from the foul line. Their starting center out of USC, the rookie Evan Mobley, finished with 26 points, 9 rebounds, and 5 assists in 36 minutes, as Mobley shot 11 for 15 from the field, 2 for 4 from 3, and he went on to shoot a perfect 2 for 2 from the foul line. With this win, the Cleveland Cavaliers are now 7-4. With this loss, the New York Knicks are now 6-4. Taking a look at what's going on in Orlando, the Magic hosted the Jazz. The Orlando Magic outscored the Jazz by 17 points in the fourth quarter to overcome their 10-point deficit. The Utah Jazz were led in scoring by their elite duo. Their elite center out of France, Rudy Gobert, would finish with 21 points and 15 rebounds alongside 3 steals and 4 blocks in 34 minutes. Gobert shot 7 for 9 from the field and 7 for 8 from the foul line. The Jazz's elite shooting guard Donovan Mitchell finished with 21 points, 7 rebounds, and 7 assists in 33 minutes. He shot 8 for 24 from the field, 2 for 12 from 3, and a perfect 3 for 3 from the foul line. The Orlando Magic were led in scoring by their starting point guard out of UNC, Cole Anthony. He finished with 33 points, 3 steals, and 2 blocks in 32 minutes. He shot 13 for 20 from the field, 5 for 10 from 3, and a perfect 2 for 2 from the foul line. Their starting center out of Duke, Wendell Carter Jr., finished with 22 points, 15 rebounds, and 6 assists in 32 minutes. He shot 9 for 14 from the field and 4 for 7 from 3. With this win, the Orlando Magic are now 3-8. With this loss, the Utah Jazz are now 7-3. Taking a look at what's going on in the nation's capital, the Washington Wizards hosted the reigning NBA champs, the Milwaukee Bucks. The Wizards would end up beating the Bucks 101-94. The Wizards outscored the Bucks by 14 in the third quarter, which would be the difference here. The Bucks were led in scoring by their elite starting power forward, the reigning NBA All-Star Game MVP, Giannis Antetokounmpo. He finished with 29 points, 18 rebounds, 5 assists, and 3 steals in 39 minutes. He shot 12 for 26 from the field and 5 for 12 from the foul line. Looking at the Washington Wizards, they were led in scoring by their elite starting shooting guard, Bradley Beal. Bradley Beal finished with 30 points, 5 rebounds, 8 assists, and 6 turnovers in 37 minutes. He shot 14 for 22 from the field and 2 for 3 from 3. With this win, the Washington Wizards are 7-3, and the defending NBA champs Milwaukee Bucks are now 4-6, 2 games below 500. Taking a look at what's going on in Sacramento, the Kings hosted the Indiana Pacers. The Pacers would end up beating the Kings 94-91, as the Pacers outscored the Kings by 8 in the first quarter and virtually carried that lead through the end of the game. The Sacramento Kings were led in scoring by their starting small forward, Harrison Barnes. He finished with 22 points, 5 assists, and 2 steals in 38 minutes. He shot 6 for 15 from the field and 9 for 11 from the foul line. The Indiana Pacers were led in scoring by their starting shooting guard, Caris LeVert. LeVert finished with 22 points and 6 rebounds in 31 minutes. He shot 9 for 22 from the field and 3 for 4 from the foul line. With this win, the Indiana Pacers are 4-7. With this loss, the Sacramento Kings are now 5-5. Taking a look at what's going on in Oklahoma City, the Thunder hosted the San Antonio Spurs. The Thunder would beat the Spurs 99-94. The Thunder outscored the Spurs by 20 points in the third quarter. That was the big difference here. The Spurs were led in scoring by their starting small forward, Keldon Johnson out of Kentucky. He finished with 22 points, 6 rebounds, and 2 steals in 38 minutes. He shot 9 for 16 from the field and a perfect 4 for 4 from the foul line. The Oklahoma City Thunder were led in scoring by their center off the bench, Mike Muscala. He finished with 20 points and 2 blocks in 14 minutes as he shot 5 for 6 from the field, 3 for 4 from 3, and 7 for 9 from the foul line. With this win, the Oklahoma City Thunder are now 3-6. With this loss, the San Antonio Spurs are now 3-7. Taking a look at what's going on in San Francisco, the Golden State Warriors were able to beat the Houston Rockets as they've won 8 of their first 9 games of the season. The Warriors outscored the Rockets in their first 3 quarters of the matchup in order to take this big lead. The Rockets were led in scoring by their starting small forward, Jae'Sean Tate. He finished with 21 points and 10 rebounds in 33 minutes. He shot 7 for 11 for the field, 2 for 4 from 3, and he would shoot 5 for 9 from the foul line. The Golden State Warriors were led in scoring by their starting shooting guard, Jordan Poole. He finished with 25 points and 5 assists in 30 minutes. He shot 7 for 13 from the field, and he would shoot a perfect 9 for 9 from the foul line. Their goated starting point guard, Stephen Curry, finished with 20 points, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, and 3 steals in 27 minutes. Curry shot 8 for 16 from the field and 4 for 11 from 3. With this win, the Golden State Warriors are 8-1. With this loss, the Houston Rockets are 1-9, and they still have yet to win a game on the road. Last but not least, taking you to the Staples Center, taking a look at what's going on with the Los Angeles Clippers. They hosted the Charlotte Hornets. The Clippers were able to beat the Hornets 120-106 thanks to their big fourth quarter where they outscored the Hornets by 12 points. The Hornets were led in scoring by their small forward out of Michigan State and their elite point guard out of Chino Hills. Miles Bridges finished with 21 points, 6 rebounds, and 2 steals in 37 minutes as he shot 7 for 19 from the field and 5 for 6 from the foul line. Their elite starting point guard, LaMelo Ball, finished with 27 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 steals, and 5 fouls in 32 minutes. He shot 8 for 19 from the field, 2 for 5 from 3, and a perfect 3 for 3 from the foul line. The Los Angeles Clippers were led in scoring by their elite starting shooting guard, Paul George. He finished with 20 points, 9 rebounds, and 8 assists alongside 8 turnovers in 38 minutes. He shot 9 for 22 from the field, 2 for 10 from 3. With this win, the Los Angeles Clippers are 5-4. With this loss, the Charlotte Hornets are now 5-6. Right now, that is what the NBA is looking like following yesterday's matchups. And, of course, taking a look at what's going on internationally, starting off in England. Liverpool fell short 3-2 to West Ham as West Ham was able to pick up the win off of Zuma's goal in the 74th minute. Origi's 83rd minute would not be enough for Liverpool as West Ham picked up those points in the table, and that was Liverpool's chance to claim the top. Taking a look at what's going on in La Liga, Atletico Madrid, the reigning La Liga champs, drew with Valencia, as Valencia's last 2 goals would come in extra time. Atletico Madrid's first 2 goals would come from their elite striker, Luis Suarez, and then their other elite forward from France, Antoine Griezmann. Taking a look at what's going on in Italian Serie A, Inter Milan, the reigning Serie A champs, face off against AC Milan in the Milan derby. It would end up a 1-1 draw, as both of the goals would come in the very first half. That's virtually everything that I've got for you today. Yesterday was a very action jam-packed Sunday, but once all of today's matchups are done, I will come back tomorrow on Tuesday, November 9th for another episode of The Elite. So until then, thanks for listening to my piece. I hope all is well, and I'll catch you with another episode tomorrow. Peace out.